check your Penn State Today email. You should today, because there is actually some commemoration information that has dropped. So there's the schedule with some of the talks and activities and items that are happening. And I'm super excited about it, especially about a special workshop that's going to happen here related to the vigil. So take a look at that. And the only other thing I want to mention is behind you, there's an exhibition, and that was then, this is now. Today is the very last day that it is on view. And I think given the state of our world right now, it may be the last day you're able to see some of the items in that case on view here at the center for a little while. So I just want to celebrate that. And also celebrate the photographs that are in that case, because many of them are taken by Jeremy Ritch, who is our graduate student here at the center, who co-curated the exhibition with me, but really helped bring the exhibition to life through his photographs, through his research, through his knowledge of different student organizations here on campus. So we are really grateful to have Jeremy here as part of our staff. And we thought, what better way to end this exhibition than to have Jeremy discuss his experience documenting protest photography. Also just thinking about issues related to protest photography. So how he archives, what are the ethics of taking photographs of protests, and all of that jazz. So I'm really excited to have Jeremy here and really showcase the work that he did related to this exhibition. So I'm going to turn things over to Jeremy. And again, afterwards, we'll open up to questions and encourage you to explore the exhibition. Thank you.
Jeremy, I know many of you here. Some of my classmates came. The other ones will be shamed. So, not extra. Take deduct points.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I'm going to take you through kind of my journey as a protest photographer. And I'm not a technical photographer. I'm not a trained photographer, but I'm an artist who became a photographer because of circumstance. So the first part of the exhibition, I'm kind of taking through my story and get into my thoughts on it. I'll show you a lot of photos that I've taken. Some are in this room, and some are not. This is my friend Sahar, who was very happy to be made famous on the Spire because she yelled at me for not putting her enough in that exhibit. So this is a photograph I did not take, but it's one of my favorite photographs ever taken that I've seen. This was during the Baltimore uprising in 2015, and it looks like a scene out of a movie. But it was just one of the, and I happened to live in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania during that, so I was able to go down and see what was happening in Baltimore. And you saw scenes like this all over Baltimore. But again, like how many people right now remember this event? Probably not that many, but the photographs are there forever. So we're able to go back and look. And I think that's why it's important. And then this quote, I just like this quote. I was looking for something to put here, and I thought it made a lot of sense, even though I think he was talking more about like not political stuff, but just documentary in general. But I thought it was really a pretty good quote to sum up why I do what I do. So that's me back in the day. So basically I was born in Cleveland, very working class family, very non-academic family. I'm the first one to ever go to college. They actually weren't into education really at all. Just get a job and do your thing. So I moved around a lot. I had a lot of things. Like you can see, I've been in many different spaces and have many different jobs, which we've talked about. So none of the jobs actually were a journalist until much later. But I found myself doing zines and things like that in high school. covering bands. But so basically I got radicalized to protesting. And when I was pretty young, probably junior high-ish, like the late 80s, Public Enemy came out, the shirt I'm wearing. I had a friend that let me listen to them. They made me really interested in this kind of subjects. I had friends who had parents that would teach me stuff. I had an Irish friend who got me radicalized to the Palestinian movement and Irish independence. And those were kind of combined things that I didn't even know about in 1993. And he got me radicalized to that. And then from there, when I started protesting right after high school, I moved to Philadelphia. And these were kind of, School of the Americas was one of the first big protests that I went to. And then, I don't know, this is pretty far back, but there was these big World Bank protests in DC and Seattle. And so I was part of those events. And basically, really at the time, I don't think I knew a lot about what I was protesting, but I liked being at it and seeing the energy and the chaos and the meeting people and networking. So it became kind of just a way to find my path into activism. And then I moved to Philadelphia in 1997. I went to college, a small Christian college there. And I met a bunch of kind of these weird radical kids who wanted to start a home in Philadelphia that was a intentional community. And this protest here, this was the first protest I ever took a picture at. So this was a freedom movement which all rally. And some of the members, some of the people in this photo, which I don't know who's who anymore, but there are people in this photo who were part of the move, like family. There was also people that were related to Mia and other people. And this mural here, I used to see every day when I walked out of my apartment. I literally lived like right over here. So I just walked out of my house and it just happened to be the Black Power contingent of this march was marching. And I remember I was this young kid and I was like, took the picture and I was like, can I march with you guys? Because we're going to the same rally. And it was like all the Black Power people. And they were like, sure. So I remember and the new Black Panther Party, I mean, it was a wild march, but it was kind of my introduction to Philadelphia. And my first photo. So, which I'm glad I still have it because so many things, when you move 28 times, you lose all. So, and then, so the background in this was a poet and an artist, mainly a poet. I'd written a bunch of poetry books and done a lot of paintings. And I got into writing. I wrote for some independent journalist sites, mostly websites in Philadelphia and in Harrisburg. So I had done some photojournalism. I didn't have a camera. I just kind of ran, do a story, take a picture, kind of thing. One of the things that I didn't put in here is in 2000, I went to the Republican National Convention in Philadelphia, and we were running kind of the media, independent media communications out of our apartment, which turned out to be not the best move. But anyway, I was doing photographs for them, and I ended up being detained, and my camera was taken, and so all the pictures I took there were listed. But two very nice FBI men took me into a room, took the camera from me, so, and they searched my apartment. Yeah, when you have an apartment full of radios, because back then we didn't have, like, no one really had the cell phones, so it was like we had the two-way radios. And apparently at FBI, they raided the apartment and found a box of them, and they were all on. So yeah, that didn't turn out too well, but that got me involved more. And then I did photography here and there. I really wasn't into it because I couldn't afford cameras. So in 2020, when I came here, it was COVID, and I was very depressed because I moved from Cleveland, where I had a house and I had my own studio. And I moved here to a one-room apartment because I wanted to go to school and get all that together. So I lost my painting studio. Super depressed, and it was COVID, and there was nobody here. And I was like, "When did I move here?" And my friend who's a photographer in Chicago was like, "I have an old camera. I'm going to send it to you." He's like, "You're a painter, you'll figure it out." So he gave it to me. So I went around and took a bunch of pictures of nothing because that's all that was here at the time. So just like random, I was just testing my eye out. And then people started coming to school. So I actually, colleagues here, I did a project with her. And it was, I kind of took those photos, and then as the students came back, there was kind of like small protests happening. And so I kind of showed this kind of life coming back to Kent State in this photo exhibit, or slideshow that I did. And that was kind of how everything really got rolling for me. So now that I had a good camera, I was like, I can go out and actually take some quality photos, maybe get paid for some, send them to magazines. And then speaking of modeling, so this is kind of just my thing. So I went to Collier Community College, got a piece of art, basically a piece of studies degree, it's the same thing. And then I got me here, and then here I kind of meandered between piece of conflict studies, English, blah, blah, blah. I ended up getting my integrated studies degree with a minor in piece of conflict studies and creative writing. But I worked at Poly with her project with Queer Britain, which is the first queer museum in the UK. And originally I was supposed to do portraits with all the people that we were interviewing, and then we would put them, be part of this exhibit. But it was COVID, and COVID in England was very, very locked down. So then I was like, okay, maybe I'll just take their picture. I found out you could do like remote photography, but then that requires them to have technology. So I had them take selfies, send them to me, I edited them, and then we put them, and then ended up in the museum's opening exhibit in England, which I got to go to, which was pretty cool. But that taught me a lot about like dealing with, having to make my own decisions. And Molly gave me I had my project called Isolated Events, which was part of the queer pandemic, so I had my own kind of thing, which was very helpful in just the confidence building as a student. And then since then, I graduated from Kent, I came back for grad school, and I got hired here. It's been a really big experience because I got to do this exhibit back here, and I've worked on more ones, and I will be working on this in the future. So I'm just going to go through a couple of photos here and go through different sections. So this was one of the early Black Lives Matter protests at the state capitol in Harrisburg. So as you see here, and it was very cold this day. It was like December. I remember it was freezing out. And so all over the steps of the Capitol, they had like chalk outlines and people just laying there to represent, the many Black people who had been killed by police. So this was before, George Floyd. So this was pretty early on. And I was hired by an amazing local website to do this. And they kind of gave me free rein as a writer, which was really nice. So I got to cover a lot of different things about police brutality, corruption in the state. And because of my proximity to the state capitol, I had access to a lot of people. Very powerful. If you know anything about the Pennsylvania legislature in general, they're very powerful. There's a lot of big people are there. And they didn't really like us. This was a pretty major protest that happened. And then there's some of you may remember that. 2022, when Roe v. Wade, that decision came down from the Supreme Court, it was the day after May 4th. So we put out, I was part of SDS, we put out emails like, come out and, protest. We were thinking, 20 people are going to come, like usually show up to our things. Well, I think it was almost 400 people at total that showed up that day. And this was like May 5th. So people were kind of done with school. We were shocked. Like, people showed up. So this is just from that march from the K to leave down to the Rock. So it was pretty significant. And then throughout the summer, they had several others at the courthouse. And this particular one, which I think OSA, maybe somebody else was involved, but this had, it was huge. I wasn't even planning to take photos that day. I was just out with my camera and I hear a giant roar of people and a police escort. And I was like, they were all just there. So that was a pretty significant march that to this day, I don't even know where these people came from because it was summer, but it was like in the middle of January. But yeah, so, which I try to like, when it's especially this kind of climate, I try to keep my camera easily because you never know when things are going to fall. And when things do, you definitely notice it because usually it's really quiet in summer. So this was a pretty, so SDS had done quite a few reproductive rights rallies. So this was the biggest one. Okay, so this was cool. So when I was in Florence, I was walking home from class and there was just all of a sudden people were in the street and I'm like, what the hell's going on here? And it's in Italian, so I was like, and so I was standing there and this is kind of the municipal building, the government kind of. So, and these are bus drivers, which I was very proud of myself. I sat there for a very long time trying to read the signs and figured out that they were bus operators. And so they were, and it's interesting in Italy because they would tell you that these things are happening. Like if you're a citizen, they're like, there's going to be a bus worker strike today between this time and this time, so we're going to shut down. There's no, and don't try to ride the bus that day because it's not going to. And while we were there were several train strikes, other things. So this is going on. And unlike American protests, this was very lively and very fun. They were drinking beers, there was, smoke bombs. They had many songs, which I forgot to bring the video, but they were singing songs up at the administrators. And they were laughing and, and there was a guy there that had the loudest whistle I've ever heard in my entire life. And he was also very scary. I'll have a picture of him later. But this was interesting because you had, down the street, there were Italian officers, with machine guns standing there. But it was a very joyful, very different than American protests. Like, I think, and they were climbing like this, hang their houses. It was wild. So that was kind of cool that I kept my camera with me pretty much everywhere in Italy too, so you never know what's going to happen. And then these, so, last year, 2023, this was the Students for Justice in Palestine chapter did a rally, and which was fairly big on the K, and they marched to the Rock, and I have some pictures in here from that. And this is Yassine, who's the gentleman you can see on the portrait in the back. He was the president at the time. And then this is another random one. So I was in New York City, actually this week. Would have been, this week today, actually, like the end of February, early March, or no, the end of March, I went to New York City, and we were just walking around in the park, and I hear all this commotion. I turn around, and it's just massive amount of people, but I was right at the start of the park, so like I just saw them coming, and I had my camera, so I was like, I'm gonna take a bunch of photos, and it was really, really cool. And my friend that came with me, she had never been to a protest, never seen a protest, like up close, and she was like, wow, this is, the energy in itself is really cool. So this just happened to be one of the photos that I got that day. So why document protests? The reason I do it gives you the opportunity, to see extraordinary people doing extraordinary things, extraordinary circumstances. Now, other people might see it as like a news thing, or just report on it. But as someone who has protested, I know what the risks are involved, and I know it's it can be very dangerous. Anyone that does a protest is putting yourself at risk. So whether it's violence or police or your job or whatever, your family, it's a risky thing to do to put yourself out there and be in mass like this. It's very exciting, it's very energetic, and I think it's important to document that. And then I think that, when you go like myself, obviously I'm gonna have my bias, but there's also obviously a bias just in general about protesters, about protests, the way the news reports it a lot. So being able to do your own kind of view of that is important because it's part of our First Amendment rights. But I'd like to try to capture the humanity of a movement, not just what you're saying. I want to show the people. I want to show you what they, these are people that when you look at this photo, you might actually not be opposed to them because you're like, oh, I can connect with this person because I see them as a human being. I don't see them as a protester. I don't see them as a communist or whatever. I see them as a person. And also just taking photos and doing it right can also show a lot of things that can be misconstrued in the public. So say the police fight somebody at a protest, find them, and I take pictures of it, I can be like, look, this is not what happened. I have proof. And that's happened before where I've had to turn pictures over because people are in court. So that's important because, and the police don't like you taking their photos, but I like to take, anytime there's cops, I try to take their photos because later it can come in handy if somebody does get in trouble. And it kind of sorts out the archival protests sometimes. So this is that protest that happened there. And one of the things that I do, obviously this is a pretty large crowd, it's not a giant, but just in the framing of the shot, I try to get as tight as I can because not to fake that there's a lot of people there, but to make you see the importance of who's there, like the energy of what's happening. And you can kind of feel like what's going on. And it also like gives context. So, it's Black Lives Matter. You can read the signs so you can kind of see what's happening without, because sometimes even when you're doing photojournalism, a lot of journalists aren't photographed. So they'll just take a photo and throw it in the newspaper. And it's not a dynamic photo. It's just like I want you to show who these people are. So this was actually amazing last week with the SB1 protest. So this is just me shooting as they were going down to the hill outside here. And in this instance, obviously I'm shooting from behind, but just the sheer amount of people, like I like shooting stuff like this because it shows, it kind of gives you that energy and what was happening. Okay, so, and this is from that protest in New York City. So I was like literally just standing in the road coming through me. And I love this guy because the entire time he was on his phone, but he was waving the flag, he was yelling, he was doing, but he never got off his cell phone, which I was like, that's incredible. And there was like just certain people. And the cool thing about doing these things is it's not till afterwards that I really know what's going on. So it's not till I get home and start going through the photos and I'm like, holy crap, like this guy with his freaking phone, or like this woman's face throughout, like the passion that she has during this is really wild. And there's certain people in the crowd that are just like, I would have never noticed it while I was taking photos because I'm just, clicking away. And they're moving fast. I mean, this is thousands of people just come passing the street. And then when you want to talk about activism, so like this is more, for me, it's just archiving events. Like I think it's important, but also, like say I was working for the newspaper, or was freelancing. This would be a good photo for that. Not necessarily doing it as an activist, but storytelling. But if I am, when I do it, it is a form of activism. This fabulous person who I don't know who it is. They were at the rally at the courthouse, and I don't know who this person was, but it was fantastic. And I like the love on the pants and everything, just perfect. But catching things like this author was post. So I'm like going through my photos and I'm like, what? This is great. Iconic. So visual storytelling influences public perception, which is important. So as we see on the news, as we see in propaganda, and propaganda is not necessarily a bad word. It's what you do with that propaganda. So like when I post a picture like this after I take it, obviously I'm posting, this protest, what they're talking about, what's going on. But also in my own mind, my audience is going to see this person. They're going to see, LGBT, they're going to see like a Black person. They're going to see that this is a protest that would speak to the crowd that I'm trying to talk to. Where, if I took a picture of, if they were wearing a MAGA hat, obviously that's where I'm going. So I try sometimes, especially on my own feed, like my Instagram and stuff, when I put out, and I have my own followers that, and they are from a certain side. So I do try to put pictures that will inspire them, make them think, will make them look at things a certain way. Like I said, hold authorities accountable. And this goes to anyone that has a camera at a protest, whether you're a journalist or anything. Like, take pictures of the police, especially when they're doing things. Because, or just even badge numbers, things like that. Like, just make sure, because it keeps people safe. And whether you're for or against what's happening, it keeps people safe. So, like, if someone gets hurt at a protest, whether you agree with them or not, they still got hurt. And if you can hold people accountable, you can. So this was a protest in, I think, 2021. These are SDS members, most of them. But as you can see, you can tell what I try to do always is I love getting the emotions. So you have different people yelling, actually COVID was great because you only got eyes. And the eyes sometimes tell way more than anything. This again was that this gentleman here was a friend of mine a few years ago, but he ran the Catholic Worker in Harrisburg. So he's very active in protests. But I just love that photo. And that was one that I think it was the first one I took. The photo. It's a great picture of just the contrast. And this is from the other day, actually. So you can see how big the protest was. That's going all the way back to the K. And they just happened to turn around. So I was like, time to get that. You get the picture of the shirt. It tells you what they're about. It tells you what's happening. This is a very informative. You can see this and you're like, okay, not only do I know it's a protest, I know what's going on. I know what they're against. I know what they're for. And then something that is sometimes controversial for people, but to show both sides. So this was in 2016. I was asked to go to a Trump rally that he was in Memphis, Tennessee. I was living there, and just cover it, take some photos, send them out. Because they didn't have anyone there to cover it with the people that I knew. So I went, and as you can see, there he is, just yelling. And then this is, inside the rally, which was wild. It was insane. Like, I've never been anything that crazy. Like, the people were nuts, but it's Memphis, Tennessee. As you can imagine what the crowd might be like in Memphis, Tennessee at a Trump rally. It was scary. But then outside, there was this Black Lives Matter protest, very small. It was only maybe 10 people. The funny thing was the parking lot was full of vendors selling Trump stuff. And but they were all like these like Black men from Memphis. So I was like, wait, that's selling Trump stuff. And they're like, this is paying my rent. Like, I'm making so much money off these people. And it was all counterfeit. And I was like, go on, that's great. So I went outside after I was in here. I was like, this is ridiculous. He was like an hour late. He was like, I go outside and someone punched my camera, which didn't really make sense because they were leaving the rally and some Trump supporter punched my camera. So I grabbed him. Well, I got detained because I grabbed him because Secret Service happened to be there. So they actually went through all my photos. It's a whole deal. But I was glad I was there because I was able to see, not only could I see what Trump was doing and how he is, but I was able to kind of document what was going on. I wish I had more pictures, but they took my SD card. So these were the only ones that I was able to obtain. Which I still don't think they took. And then this is also from outside. So this is kind of right before my camera got punched, actually. So it was like all these people and then all these blurred spots, they were just screaming, coming out of this rally, just screaming at these. It's very strange. Like the anger that was coming out of that room. This is inside the anger, waiting for Trump to get on stage. And as you can see, it was a sea of white people. They were very, very, like, once he got on stage, it was just, I didn't feel comfortable. And then, so technical tips, like I said, I'm not a trained photographer. I don't even plan to really know how to use my camera. I have like one of the more simpler cameras, so I don't have to go through menus. Really like that. But fast shutter speed, very important. When the crowd is moving at you, you want to make sure that you take and as many photos as you can. At the rally the other day, I took 500 photos, I think. So you might use 100 of them if you're lucky. A lot of it's not going to be good. A lot of it's just going to be feet, face, whatever, blurry. But and this is one of the ones that I really loved from the other day. He just kind of looked at the camera as I was taking a photo. He's in a sea of people. Frame shots to highlight emotions. That's a big thing for me. Like I want to make sure I get people yelling, or I've had people crying, or just like anger in their face. I think anything that shows like the emotion, as you can even see in these, like you can see the emotion in people's faces. Minimal gear is really important. You don't want to be dragging a whole lot of stuff around because you're running. Like I'm physically running to take a photo, and kind of that's. And then obviously, if you have natural light, it's great. If it's a sunny day, it's very good. If it's cloudy, it can be rough. If it's getting dark, that's not always so fun. But basically, just use what you can. And like I said, today you have the camera phones and stuff that are just as good. Some ways. So don't ever worry about what kind of equipment you have. Just go out and do it. So this is from the other day. I love this photo because it just shows the emotion of the moment. And then obviously the colors, that's big. Especially when you want to get a reaction, you want to put it like online, or if you're using it for any kind of propaganda or anything, that grabs attention. So there were several people in the protest that had colors on. There was a lot of LGBT folks in the protest, so I thought it was good to really focus in on that because a lot of the speakers were, so you got to see kind of that community in mass. This is a great one. I just love this. So this was one of the preachers on here about what abortion is. And this woman was yelling at the man, and I forgot what she said, but I just captured this funny moment where she was like kind of mocking him, and then this guy who was not on her side, remember, just kind of looking. Let's go over here. And then this is from the one in New York City. And these are some of my favorite captures of pollution. And just, like when you see that, you can feel it. But you can also see, I try to take as many pictures of diversity that I can to show how people are reacting in different ways. And, this person obviously was, and I remember her, she just kept going. And that was the other thing, like I kind of remember people. So when I'm going through my photos, and I only see it for a split second. That's the thing. So now they live forever in the photograph. And when I posted these, every once in a while, because I'll post the event where I'm at, and sometimes the people see themselves, and I'll be able to send them the photo, talk to them, get their story. So it's in a way, it's still doing photojournalism. And this one, this is actually a friend of mine. She is very passionate, as you can see. She actually had a comment once that she's like, "Why is there a picture that you ever taken of me? I'm screaming," and I'm like, "Just scream a lot around the camera." So she's also and there's the flag. And he was so happy too. And that was the thing I thought, like, it was very. This woman, this might be my favorite photograph. She was, and she's actually a local Harrisburg woman leader. Very wonderful. I don't know, I just caught that moment. And I remember when she saw it, she cried. He's actually went into he's the Patriot News. So I was really proud. And this is the guy from New York, right? Which is kind of funny because he just kept getting closer as I was like standing there and he just got like real close. And then at one point he just stared in my camera. I knew he was going to test it. And then he saw like I had a pedal studio. It's like, you know, he definitely. And this is just seeing from campus. This is another one of my favorite photos. And knowing him, and knowing his emotion, knowing why he was there, I thought it was like one of the most like powerful photos that I've ever taken. And his emotion, I know him, it's real, and it's isn't like a good thing. This one I love. It's a little blurry. That's the other thing I'd like to say. Like, I know other photographers make it bad about a blurry photo. I don't think it's that bad. If it tells the story, it's a beautiful photo. There's some great photos in history that are blurry. And this one, it's like if you can't feel something from that, then seeing it. And then this is another one, the Black Lives Matter protest. This guy was funny because I looked for it. He wasn't from Harrisburg, so no one knew where he went. He kind of disappeared after the rally. But I like wanted him to have this photo. This is from SDS at the courthouse. You know, doing chants is a big thing. I just saw her again. This is the guy that scared me. Who also had the loudest whistle. But I'm taking all these pictures, and he just like all of a sudden is in my shot with that look on his face. And he was about 6'3", 6'4", and I was like, okay. And he speaks Italian. I don't really. And he walked up to me and was like, what are you doing? And I had a conversation in his best Italian as I couldn't talk to him. And he ended up, he's like, oh, you're from America? I was like, yeah, I did journalism. Like, this is really cool. And he was like, can you tell your friends in America what's happening with the bus drivers here? I was like, what the bus drivers? Okay. And he was like, very, and he's like, you want a beer? And I was like, I don't drink. And he's like, oh, yeah. But I did put it up. He made me put it on Instagram, actually made me show him, which I was like, sure, I don't be hurt. Because he looked like he would throw it. And some of the other guys there too, like they were like yelling at the cops. I was like, these guys want to fight, so I'll be his friend. And then he realized that I was in there. So he was like, I got introduced to all these. Okay, and this is also at the, and this is the other thing. This is like, because you'll see on the news, they'll call these protesters different names or say terrorists, whatever. This is a family enjoying a protest. This little boy on the shoulders. I mean, this is a beautiful photo. And they're obviously having a very good time. I love this photo. I wish I could find that family to start. Okay. And so now we'll get to that. I have questions. So the idea of consent. So I'm a little iffy on this because I'm an artist, I'm a photographer, I do street photography, so this is consent things. This couple, I put them here for a reason. So I was at this rally, I walked by, and I was like, holy crap, those are two very beautiful people with signs. And I was like, what are they doing here? I've never seen them before. And so I walked up and I said, can I take a photo? Because I was just like, they just looked cool. They were very cool people. So I took the photo. I got their permission. But then other things, if I'm at a rally, like if I'm at a march, I'm not asking everyone permission to take a photo. So it's not. That's my job as a documenter, is to document. If someone comes up to me and says, I was in the photo, can you remove me? Sure, I'll. But I'm not going to ask every individual person permission to take pictures at a giant crowd. But if you're embedded with an organization, which I have been before, so if a group asks me to take photos, like SJP or SDS, or I will ask the group, is there anyone here that doesn't want a photo taken? let me know, or let me know afterwards when we look through the photos so I can put your face. That kind of thing. Legal rights is important. Each state is different. So in Ohio, I can do picture anyone I want. So I can videotape you, I can take a photo. I have full rights. Other states aren't the same, so you have to watch, especially if there's police around. Sometimes it's very, good to ask permission or have some kind of identification. I do have identification, so I work for a magazine, so they have a press pass they gave me, so I do wear that sometimes if I'm at a protest. I also just bought like media patches to put on my jackets and stuff in case we're at something that could be a little more dangerous, because I do have protections as a journalist to be there. But remember, if you are a photojournalist, an artist, photographer, and you want to tell a story, that's your job. Tell a story. Do it unapologetically. Because the thing is, at the moment, someone might be upset. But in history, when if these photos are around and you see them 20, 30, 40 years, they might be something that will make the next generation. So, like in the back here, we have, pictures of the bus walkout in '68. I'm sure not every student in that wanted to. Now it's one of the most powerful things that ever happened across campus in this country. So you have these moments, or we were just in Mississippi, so if those photos that we saw didn't exist because people were like, I don't have the permission to take a photo of this person or whatever, that history we wouldn't have it to see. It wouldn't bring that emotion to us. So it's a fine line. I'm of the notion that if I'm doing street photography, if I see somebody that looks cool, I will go up to them and say, can I take a photo? But if I want to get an actual photo, I'm just going to take a photo. There's an old adage, like it's better to ask forgiveness than to ask permission. Sometimes that's the case when you're doing this kind of work. So here's another example. It's in Minnesota, our SDS chapter. We were in marching to the DA's house at night. And it was an unsanctioned protest. It was not legal. We were blocking major roads. There were biker gangs blocking roads for us so we could get down the street. And we stood outside this man's house and chanted. They had music and everything. And it was because SDS members had been arrested. They were facing trials. So I purposely didn't take anybody's photo that day because I knew that this could get them in trouble. And I was part of SDS. I was there with SDS. That's why I did it this way. And then here was one of the students for Justice Palestine. Some of the students asked that I put faces, and I was taking photos for them. They asked me to do. So afterwards, they were like, "These are the people." So I took them out. I don't particularly like doing that if I'm putting the photos out myself or sending them somewhere because newspapers not going to put faces, and it doesn't really capture what I need to capture. But out of respect, I did that. And this sign did say something, but so I wasn't just carrying the flags. And then protest signs. So the next two sections are just the signage forms of that. But so basically, protest signs are so important because that is what it's the story, it's the context, it's the cultural significance, it's everything. And it can be funny, it can be informative, it can just be powerful. So all of these signs are so important, so interesting as a photographer. I love the signs. So this, I don't know, you could probably see, do you know what that says? Yeah, so basically they were saying they wanted more pay and they felt that the government was not supporting them. But I remember I sat there. Transportation, public transportation. So, but to the Italian walking down the street, this is a very telling. It gives them that's all the information they need to know why they're there. And this person just rode their bike in front of it and it made it really cool. So then this was from the one reproductive rights rally. It looks like it's posed, but they were kind of staggered. But you know, this is some great signs, some really funny stuff in there. Like, there were some wild signs that I was going to put in here, and I was like, oh, because this, but yeah. So very, very creative, and that's the thing. Like, it should creativity of people. Yeah, this would was pretty wild. And then this is maybe the most famous one that I ever, and we actually have it in the show behind us. It was found on the ground after this protest. I don't know who this person is. I never saw him before, never saw him again. But they were protesting the food on campus and how they felt that it was not good. And Venus Todd became a very, famous sign. And I believe Todd has seen the sign. Yeah, so I was glad to have salvaged that one. And it lives on forever in my photos and here. And this is the SB 83 protest at May 4 a few years ago, before it was SB 1. So again, you can see the signs. And what I love about signs too is like things like this. Like Michelle Reynolds, like 10 years, like a couple years from now, nobody's gonna care. But at that moment, these names are important. Like these things are very like now. And then obviously this tiny little sign, I love it. It's like simple, nothing to it. It's just Black Lives Matter hashtag. But you notice it, and her face says it all. I love just that photo because with the face and the sign, it's like that's why I'm here. And then this one, I thought it was adorable. Such a nice, it's just a nice picture, but it's saying, it's giving fascism. It's so good. Yeah. So, and I love that. The thing about protest signs is you can pretty much do whatever you want. There's so many things you can do. And then another one of my most famous, and Ben, which that one's over there. I mean, looking at him and that, it's like that is how he would say that. That is what he would say. And then you have things like this that are just very to the point. This is why we're here. This is why we're marching. And it's just a really good photo. And I love this one. This is at the commemoration, I believe. I don't know who's speaking, but I think that's Todd standing up there to protect our education. And then this was in New York. I just love the way the signs look with the city in the background. Gives context. This one, I love this pissed off grandma still protesting this shit. Like, and that's the other thing is like, because like I said, I take all these things, so I don't know what sign I'm getting sometimes. Like I see one, but later I see this. It's awesome. And then I wanted to talk about graffiti, which isn't necessarily like at a protest, but it is protest art. All the graffiti in here is going to be from when I was in Europe. Most of it's in Italy. This is right around the corner. So it's basically like an anti-fascist thing, and we're anti-fascists here in Florence. This was in Florence, right around the corner from the Kent State Institute, which I thought was interesting. I wonder how many are American tourists doing this, or European tourists, or if it's locals. I know obviously in town and stuff. Like this is a great photo of around the corner of the state. So the whole alley. So this was it's the patriarchy that it fell. That's pretty much what they're that's what they're saying. So it's like 3,000, which I found this was kind of next to that last. There was a lot of really. This is in Venice. Which when I was in Venice, I can understand this completely because there were too many tourists there, and I was very, very, very claustrophobic. But there were a lot of this going on in Italy, like too many tourists, too many Airbnbs. This is a mural in Bristol, England, and I just thought it was amazing. It's huge. It's like the whole side of this big building. So this is, a form of protest. And then stuff like this. This was in an alleyway Glasgow, Scotland. For some reason, I went there. They know why I'm in the alley. It was like a literal like dark alley. And I was like, "What's down here?" You know. And I was like, "I'm big and tattooed. Nobody's gonna kill me." And people in Glasgow are lovely, so they were really really nice anyway. But I thought that was a beautiful. So stuff like that, I still consider protest photography because how many people are going down that alley in Glasgow? But now they can because I just showed it. This is in, I can't remember the name of the town, but it's the town that the airport's in. So I don't know. Yeah, so this is in that town. I stayed there for 2 nights. So this was right around the corner, like right in the water. But it was really interesting too, because we saw a lot of this all over Italy, and they had these rainbow flags. I was there with mom actually for an LGBT class. We were like, oh, it's all these gay pride flags. No, it's a totally different thing. It was an anti-war kind of. But it was really interesting because you saw the rainbow. Oh, they here, and they were like, not really. They don't like war. Getting there, baby steps. All right, but. And this, I was coming out of the train station, and I saw this couple. So I was like, "This is an instance right in exposition." I was just like, "This is a beautiful photo because they're passing this feeding." I love the smashed borders, and then the AK at the bottom, which is pretty interesting. I saw that a lot, which is really interesting because I see it all over America, and this stands for all cops are bastards. So to see it all over Italy was really interesting. Because you see it in the US cities all the time. And then this, I just thought. So I was on the train in Pittsburgh, we were stuck to take naps, which I think is a revolutionary statement. So I put it in the show. It's in my show. And I love that it's framed with this text. And then Gabagool. In Italy, around the corner of my house. Sopranos, or has been in Jersey, or Eastern US. Gabagool is a common word for capital land. So to see it, they laugh every single day. So finally, archiving and sharing your work. I guess I'm not an archivist, like I don't know how to actually archive anything. I think the people that do that are amazing and should be applauded for their work. As far as digital media, though, like editing is very important. Make sure you all that because it does come in handy, especially if you want to use these photos in like an exhibit or something else. Like when I did this exhibit, I had to go through all mine and be like, shit, what year is this? I don't know. So you have to do that. Obviously, you can store your images, social media, all that stuff. Social media a little iffy because people will steal your stuff and they will post it as their own. I don't really care when people do that because I don't really care if people follow me or not. I've had plenty of people steal my work because my opinion is at least the people seeing it. It's not that big a deal to me. I'm not making money on it anyway. So, and then remember that the cycles move fast, so this stuff could be lost. The thing about graffiti too is like that's why I've been taking it because graffiti is very temporary, but it's telling a story. It's good to take a picture of it because it might not be there. And then, archiving obviously keeps things going. And if you do like print photography, obviously there's many more steps to archiving. There's a lot to learn about that. I can't afford to do a lot of film photography, unfortunately. But I think doing any kind of archive is important, whether you're putting on a zip drive, even just make sure your stuff's safe, make sure it's organized. Make sure that that you edit your photos. I think it's really important because when you put them up, what makes a good photo, in my opinion, isn't necessarily the clarity of it or the picture itself, but the care that you gave it to tell the story. So the way that you reframe, like you have a mass crowd and you find someone interesting in it, how do you frame that photo? Story. So, and these are just some of the last photos. This is cool. I don't know what this is about at all. So there was a bombed out church that the Nazis had bombed in World War II. And through the bars, I saw this sign on the ground. So I can't even actually see, it says free Bristol protesters. I don't know what the Bristol protesters were, I don't know what they did. I don't know why the sign was there. I was like, it's an interesting sign. And I actually, so my friend, who was my old roommate, to be the mayor of Bristol, that's a whole other story, which was bizarre. But anyway, I met with him. I asked him about the Bristol protesters, and he kind of waved me off. So I don't know if you want to talk about, I don't know what's going on. But there were Bristol protesters. They were not inside this burned out church. So I don't know where they need to be free from, but hopefully they were. I don't know what they were protesting. So, and then this is from the Palestine protest. Like that. I love this photo. It's just so simple, but powerful. And that's pretty much it. So does anyone have questions?
At the beginning, mentioned that activism kind of gave your life some direction.
Yeah.
I think that's a really beautiful stuff, and especially right now when so many people are doing
Yeah. 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 Thank you. Yeah, I got lucky. So when I was growing up, we lived in a community, a pretty racially mixed community. My part of the community was mostly Black, and I had friends who just happened to have parents who were activists. So when I was like 10 years old, I was at this house their dad was like an ex-Black Panther kind of guy. So he was like, "You're going to read these books," and I was like, so he gave me books about Black Power, and I tell the story. I used to stay over their house, and in the morning on Saturday mornings or whatever morning I stayed there, he'd look at his two sons and be like, at breakfast, "Who don't we trust? White man." And I was like, and then he'd look at me and say, "Who do you trust?" And he was like, "Damn straight, and go out and do your thing." And so they taught me a lot. And then music, like I said, Public Enemy came out in the late 80s. I was that age. I was 18, changed my life. Raising Against the Machine, obviously. Some of the Riot Girl movement was really big when I was in high school. So Bikini Kill, bands like that, taught me about feminism. So I got a lot from music, which I don't know what's happening today as much as it used to. But anybody else?
So, as we talked before, I'm from China, and the protest is a very rare thing in China. So I like it. When I came here the first time, I saw a protest that was in DC 2 weeks ago, and it was really amazing. I think it's in my country, there's a dictatorship, so people cannot express themselves, especially cannot protest against government policy. So I really think the protest is really valuable for the freedom of speech and freedom assembly something. So yeah, I was really inspired by your great photos, and that's so. Like the nearest protest happening in China was after COVID. No, it was during COVID. Was against our zero COVID policy. People were going out and hold the A4 paper without any word on it. But people all know that we got put on a say something, but you just like log our message on the social media and like so people die every day, but we cannot express anything. So that's I think that's the main cause for the protests happens. I was in many major cities, and I was in school, and somebody heard my national anthem, and I don't know why, but I said really early that day. But after I got the Beijing and I can use YouTube, I saw that protests happening every day. So shocked. There can be such a huge protest. So I was really I appreciate those who sacrifice their freedom for our freedom, for people's freedom. So I respect it, and I respect everyone for the protest.
And Dr. Connor a lot about China, which is really good. Because I have no opinions of China and communism. My own opinions of communism, him about living under it. So, and that's again, two sides of the story are really important to learn. And obviously, you know, being in this space, protesting is a big reason. This is the only reason we're here. Actually, people protest, you know, sacrifice for things to vote to someone to all kinds of things. So, anyone else?
Yeah, so I'm thinking about, especially lately, we're talking about this morning, college campuses and the government targeting students, and I'm wondering if as you're moving forward, because I saw some strategy, right, taking pictures from signs, taking pictures from back, like protecting, especially the folks who might be, I guess, visibly assumed to be the most vulnerable, like strategies for capturing moments, but protecting people, even in these large crowds, because so ailments, you know, people might use, I heard you say people use my photos in cases against cops. But also cops looking at photos, right?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things I would say about that. Number one, having protests for years, and nowadays, like everywhere you go, you're on the, like if you're in a city, if you're on campus, if you're on camera, like, and those are the cameras that are here, and they're taking your photos. These are taking your photos. Now, so there's a protest coming up Monday. I reached out to CDP, so I've started to talk to them, so I know what they want me to do, what they don't want me to do, and I know the members of their group who are going to. Another thing, and it sounds really kind of like an asshole thing to say, but cover your face, cover your tattoos. Like, don't protest if you don't want to get in trouble, and that's something that I'm kind of glad that's happening now, that it's getting more serious, because one of the things that annoyed a lot of activists during, say, like Black Lives Matter or even like the Women's March and stuff, is that a lot of people went, but then the movement also died, but it also became a very trendy thing. So people were doing selfies and things like that. And it's like, that's not why you're there. Like, you are there to sacrifice. Like, you might get hurt. Like the photo I showed in Minnesota, we took these Kent students there and they had never been to a protest. That was except on this campus, which is the safest place in the world. Like Kent State is like the safest place. The safest. This place is a testament to that. You cannot get in trouble here anymore. Like it is very, they're not going to do that to you. It's going to take a lot. So we're in Minnesota where these cops are definitely not good people. I was like, you know, stay together, you know, make sure you are with a partner, make sure we know where you're at. All of these, because people can really get hurt, but part of protesting is sacrificial. So if you're willing to, you have to be willing to get arrested or get in trouble or face tear gas, all of those things. It can happen. So I think it's important for people to, like I said, reach out to SCP or things like that, but also not, you know, but take your own responsibility. Because it really is. Like if you're that scared to go, don't go. Like it's you can fight in other ways. There's other ways to get involved. There's other things to do. If you're really, really at risk and you don't want to get in trouble or get, you know, again, probably don't go to the protest. Like it's not, you're not, it's not like limiting movement because you're not there. So I would say, like I said, it's a fine line. Like I'm not gonna take pictures of the Muslim students on campus and just throw them on because I know what's going on. Other people will, that's the problem. Other people have camera phones, whatever, whether they take a selfie, somebody's in the background. And the thing is, like, the government can find us. Like, we are not in the 60s anymore. Like, they know where we're at. They track our phones. I mean, there's no way. But it's a good question. Yeah.
Kind of related to that, for the purpose of sharing photography, especially artist photography, I know that you're obviously taking the risk, and a lot of your photos that are okay, go online, go online.
Yeah.
But what kind of advice would you offer for academics and those of us who are involved in professional advocacy, for sharing these photos, for these photos, these photos that we try and use them work.
I mean, I think in academia it's hard, right? Because you gotta be careful what you're doing, and you also have to be responsible for students. I mean, I think it's important to share this kind of stuff. Like if you were teaching a class and you're like, can I use your their class, talk to their class about this kind of thing. I do think, like I said, it's hard to, we don't understand how to navigate this because it's changing every day. So, I think, if you show protest photos in your class for a certain reason or different activism or stuff that you've done, I think that's important. I think you should, because I think one of the things I know about young people is when they see like a professor has done, someone that they actually look up to has done it, that inspires them to do it and might give them more courage to do it. But at the same time, it takes courage for you to do that, because depending on your department, who you're answering to, what's going on, showing this presentation. So that is a good question. I don't really know. It's academia is like very tough.
First, I want to thank you for this. It's really, it's really good to see where you're working. In the body of the rest of it. And I have a disagreement. The reason comment is that, particularly since you're working here at the center, which is part of the libraries, that perhaps you might want to have some conversation with our this some of your collection into the archives. And then my question for you is that what I found actually funny about your presentation is that you're coming from three different perspectives. You're actually forward. So you're an activist, you're an artist, you're a journalist, you're a scholar. Yeah. And if you're negotiating all these identities, and I just wondered if you could give some insight into how you engage in that sort of self-negotiation.
That's a good question. So I think it's a question I get because I've never had 4 days. I've never had a career, so I kind of just jumped around to different things. When it comes to this kind of work, so obviously, I'm an artist. So it's like I want to take pictures of beautiful things, and whether it's trees or portrait shoot someone or humanity doing things that I think are beautiful, which is fighting against oppression and things like that. So that's part of it. And then, I think professionally, like looking at that way as a photographer, it's like I don't want to be the best photographer. I don't care about that. I don't want to be the best artist. I don't care about that. But I would like photographers to look at my work and be like, that's good. And people that know photography, to tell me if it's good, it's bad, it's, whatever. But at the same time, I also, as an activist, it's like I need to tell the story, not only the story that is out there, but the story that I believe is true, the story of these people. Like I want to, show, just because, like some of the people, like the people's faces, like I want that story to hit so hard, because it makes me cry when I'm doing it, so I want people to see that and be like, what is that about? And then like, as a scholar, which is more recent, and what I learned working with you and other people, like working here, is like, how do I, how do I transfer the photos to like a museum setting, an archive setting, in a way that like, how do I use my photos in something like here where this isn't about my politics, like this show has nothing, this isn't about my politics, some Chloe's politics, this is about the center telling a story about campus. But in those photos, I have a lot of emotion. I love those photos. So navigating that, I've had to learn, and that's a learning experience of like, we are telling a story in a way that's not trying to push any agenda. It's just telling the story. And I think it's hard sometimes to navigate because I didn't take those pictures necessarily to do that. I took those pictures to tell their story or to push a certain thing. So I think that, I've learned to multitasking is in my brain between these worlds. But I think being an artist has always let me do that. So like in academia, like I don't know what I'm doing as a master's student. I don't understand. I really never understand school. So when I came to school and now I'm in a master's program, now I'm thinking about doing a PhD, like I don't know what that is. And I often have to ask people like how do you graduate? Like what do I do? You know, because in my mind, I'm doing it. I don't know. I don't know how I'm getting grades. I don't know exactly what I'm doing, but I know I'm doing it and it's cool and it's interesting and it's better than working, which I hated the job there. So navigating all of that and navigating the fact that I come from blue collar, anti-education, you know, education's for the rich. You're not rich. That's not your place in life. To, you know, navigate that to here and just working in this setting. And I've worked in other museums and navigating that, like it's exhausting. But yeah, like I think it's just a matter of moving pieces around and understanding that they're interconnected. Like the scholar in me is very connected to the artist because I need scholarly things to understand art. Like learning art is important. So I think they're all intersected in some way. Anybody else?
It's just kind of tied to all these things I was thinking of that, but more like in terms of your own personal decisions that you concentrate on, I that we talking about, and right now the aesthetic and your decision on the aesthetics and like interpretation of these photographs during your contest you take, and like how you decide this artistic decision because then you're also an artist, but also an activist.
Yeah.
Well, technically, art is also activism.
Yeah.
Like, there's like whole different ways we can discuss this, different identities.
Yeah.
But in terms of your decision, like for example, I realized in some of your pictures, you blur the people in the back. In some of your pictures, you say don't do it. You like get the whole picture.
Yeah.
And then like, how do you decide that? Because in my country also. There's a protest going on right now, and there's also a debate that the photographers are romanticizing this really important cause because, like, they took a picture of someone just standing in this giant police barricade, and then there's the one protester. I mean, unbelievable one protester,
Yeah.
which is like giving their voice to the police
Yeah.
force, and then now it's like all over the news, and it's not only focus, and then they're kind of like romanticizing, and like how do you find that? How do you make
Well, that's a good question. And I think there is a problem with performative protesting, which I think performative protesting is important. It can be. I have friends who shows. And framing a photo can be useful. We've seen it before. There was during the Black Lives Matter, there was one black boy hugging a police officer and he was crying. And it turned out that was a fabricated photo, which it seemed pretty hokey, but it was like, you know, emotional. They put it, you know, it was everywhere. But it's like, you see it and it was like, look at this beautiful photo. But like, so, well, like say like something like, so there's several like where you would blur. A lot of times, I mean, the blur in general, like if I take a photo, a lot of times, whatever I'm focusing on, anything that matters is going to be blurred because of the camera and the lens. So sometimes I'm not thinking about that, but so like this one, for instance, like this was a bigger photo, obviously, because it's a full frame camera, so it takes a big. But when I was editing the photo, I was like, oh my god, the way this man's looking at me. So I, you know, did that just to kind of tell a story to myself, really. Like I've never really put this photo. And then like photos like this, you know, I'm trying to capture. This again was like a wider shot, but the emotion on his face I thought was most important of the shot, so I kind of zoomed in. And then other ones I zoomed in just with zoom lens, like this one. And then, you know, these are blurred out in the background. The ones where I purposely do blurred faces, obviously they were asked for different reasons. They didn't want to be. I try not to make my photos like staged, which in my opinion, they don't. I mean, this one was funny, but but I can see how that could. And I think today is really hard too, because people use AI or people use whatever, and people do stage photos, which is easy. But they've been staging photos since they started taking photos. I mean, I think it was like Weston was accused of staging some of his photos. Like, you know, of landscapes and stuff, like people drag like a dead horse behind, it's, you know, but, so I think, I mean, honestly, like this one, for instance, is just, it just happened. I think a lot of it comes down to you as a doctor, like what's your integrity? Like, and are you a genuine integrity? Like, do you have integrity? So like, if you see a photo of mine, you're like, I don't know about that. And I'm like, it's real. And then you're like, well, he works with Molly, so I'm gonna ask Molly, who's, you know, a professor and has, you know, people respect her opinion on things. I trust that Molly's gonna also say he's genuine, he takes genuine photographs. So I think networking is important. Who you talk to, the way you go out in the public and do your work is important. I feel like, you know, the people that do fake stuff, I think, pretty easy. Because they also like have probably way more followers than I have. And they do things to get attention. Because that's performative protest. Like people do things just to get attention. I think it's a dangerous thing to do. Because one, I think it hurts the movements, definitely, but it also diminishes people that are doing it genuinely. And just, you know, just be genuine, like be a good person and put some glory photographs. Like, that's a thing too, like be honest. Like my work's not that great. Like I've seen way better work than mine. And I have photographers that definitely tell me that all the time. They have to let me know. Mm-hmm. You know, and then they're like, what lens do you use? And I'm like, the one I got for $50 on eBay because I'm not rich, you know. And that's the thing that I also want to tell you with lens is that if you have a camera, use it. Take photos. If this is what you want to do, don't go out and buy a $3,000 camera because one, you're not going to know. You're not going to know what it does. So you've wasted a lot of money on a computer that takes photos. I use a Canon 5D that someone gave me, and I love that camera. There's nothing to it. It takes wonderful photos. But the thing is, it's your eyes. Look, if you see something great, you see something cool, you see something that moves you, you see a person that's beautiful, and you ask them if you can take their photo. That's photography to me. Now, if you want to become a professional photographer and shoot magazines, you really got to know stuff. Like there's a whole thing that I don't want to do. Because as much as I'm a scholar, I'm a lazy person. I don't like to do a lot of stuff. I hate reading manuals. So that's why my camera is really easy to use. Anyone else?
We can do one more.
Yeah, one more question. Now you have to ask. So, well, thank you then. My information was over here. And check out, so I have a photography page. Yeah, so this is my Instagram with my art on it. I also have a personal one, but I'm not giving it to you. But if you find me, I may add it. And also you can email me. And if anybody wants me to, you know, talk to a class or whatever else, let me know, because I'd love to inspire people to use their cameras. And yeah, if anyone wants to know more about